Hey guys, welcome back to NWCS. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to use a simple jig to route in juice grooves into all your cutting boards. This is just made up of several pieces of scrap that I actually screwed together, and then I just screwed down to a scrap piece of plywood that can kind of be adjusted for whatever size cutting board is going inside of the jig. So in this case, let's just say from the edge of your router to the center, you have 2 inches, and you want your juice grooves to be 1 inch in on your cutting boards. So what you need to do is actually rip a strip that is the difference. So if you want it to be inside of an inch from the edge of your cutting board, you have a 2-inch difference. So that strip right there that butts up against the cutting board needs to be an additional inch. And then you pretty much just make a wall for the edge of your router to ride up against. And then you can make them as long as you want it, because if you assemble this in like a spiral, starting with one piece and then kind of work your way around the cutting board, if they're longer, it doesn't matter. You just need to make sure that your edges are flush, and then you can kind of work your way around the cutting board and adjust the pieces however you need to. And then I flush out my bit to the top of the cutting board, so then when I use my depth stop, I drop it in 1/4 inch and I can do my first plunge. And then from there, I'm just working my way around the cutting board, going in a clockwise fashion, just routing out the depth of my juice groove that I want. And because I am using my depth stop, if I want this to be a little bit deeper, all I have to do once I get the full rotation all the way around is to rotate the turret on my depth stop and then go down a little bit deeper. I believe I stop at 1 pass for all of these. I might do a second. Yeah, okay. This pass I didn't go any deeper. I'm just using this to clean up any fuzzies that are left over inside of the juice groove. But again, you can also widen it by slightly adding your shims from which all, let's say I wanted to go in like another 1/4 inch, I can put 1/4 inch shims on all of my runners. Or again, just by using a larger bit, you can also do the same thing and just use the exact same jig. And you guys will see in just a moment how adjustable it is for various size cutting boards. So all I have to do is actually just unscrew 2 of the rails and then readjust it to make sure that it lines up perfectly to the edge of the cutting board. I do need to get dust collection figured out for my routers though, because these are actually the biggest dust creators inside of my shop. Just because I don't have any proper setup for them right now. I lost the initial dust fitting that came with this router, so kind of SOL. So whenever I use my router for flattening processes or routing in juice grooves like this, that's the one thing I can't collect any dust on. But again, this process is pretty easy. You saw how I just pretty much unscrewed the rails. I want to make sure that the one on the left is lined up to the bottom of the cutting board. That way when I run my bottom one, I can run it straight across. And again, doing it in this method allows me just to pretty much re-screw it and place any size cutting board inside this jig. And all these pieces, no matter how long they are, can be reused for whatever size cutting board. It's a pretty simple jig. I just threw it together out of some scraps, and this is just a scrap piece of plywood that I had laying around in the shop. So it works out just fine for this process. And this process gets pretty repetitive, so you guys get to see how this pretty much gets done. But I do run into one small issue with these thinner cutting boards, and that is the spacers that I have inside of here are too thick. So what I end up doing is actually raising up all the cutting boards, all these thinner ones, with just some 1/2 inch spacers, just to make sure that again the cutting board is sitting above the my spacers going all the way around, or my border. That way my router is actually riding on the cutting board and not on the border, because if you do that, then you can have a tendency to have that actually tip, and we don't want that. So there's a little bit of adjustment I have to do to the jig to make this all work out. I forgot what I did. I think I had to use double-sided tape to get the shims put in there. I needed something a little bit thicker also. That's what it was. But one thing I can say about this though, because of how I actually had this, it'd be better if my spacers were ripped out of something that's thinner than all the material I'm going to use. And another thing that probably would actually help more, as you guys saw, after it's been raised up, it kind of has a little bit of play in there, because I have a chamfer on the underside of all these cutting boards. So it technically allows it to move around a little bit. So doing this before I actually did all the chamfers and edge profiling probably would have been a good idea. It's something I didn't think about until, we get to this stage. But it works out pretty fine. They stay pretty stable. I think I do have like a little bit of a rock in it, but nothing that I can't sand out by hand, or if I actually use slow routing methods, keeping my hand on the cutting board, on the jig and everything else, I don't really have any issue. It's just something else that I have to keep in mind. But yeah, if you guys have enjoyed, let me know down in the comments. Leave me a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.